Shortly after, you can hear an officer as he realizes he shot the colleague who was undercover. The body cam capturing the whole thing. ABC's Clayton Sandell tonight on the officer who was shot, who later sued, and tonight has won a major settlement.
Hands up! Hands up!
Newly released video in the heat of a drug bust takedown. An apparent suspect with a gun is shot.
Put your hands where I can see them! Good! Good!
But what Albuquerque Police Lieutenant Greg Bracco quickly realizes is he just shot a fellow cop.
Oh, that was Jacob! Are you okay? No. Come on out, dude! Come on! I'm sorry, man! I didn't know it was you! Come here! Come here, Jacob! Jacob is shot!
Detective Jacob Grant, working undercover, is hit multiple times.
I actually felt every round as it impacted my body.
More than a dozen surgeries later, his career is over.
Complaining doesn't really seem to fix anything or make anything better.
He sued the city, which this week settled for $6.5 million.
Both Jacob and Laura are extremely strong people.
Since 2010, Albuquerque police shooting lawsuits have cost taxpayers more than $40 million.
I thought you were a bad guy!
Lieutenant Bracco, who could not be reached today, retired just as a police board said he should be fired for numerous mistakes that day.
He's got hit in the leg!
Mistakes that nearly cost one officer his life.
Christian persecution is on the rise around the world, according to Open Doors USA. The bombing of Christians in Pakistan on Easter was just one of the latest examples. A faction of the Taliban claimed responsibility for that attack, killing more than 70 people. Open Doors reports more than 7,000 Christians were killed for their faith last year, almost 3,000 more than in 2014. The group's president, David Curry, tells the Daily Beast many Americans don't understand just how serious the state of Christian persecution is throughout the world, and it's expected to keep getting worse.
This month, researchers unveiled video technology that seamlessly changes a person's appearance in real time, manipulating facial expressions and what it appears they're saying.
We are able to manipulate YouTube videos in real time.
The computer software works with a simple webcam, which takes a 3D scan of one person's facial expressions and uses it to animate another person's face.
In order to evaluate our approach,
this YouTube demonstration shows how the expressions of world figures like U.S. presidents, presidential candidates, even Vladimir Putin can be altered.
The first question, are you a felon?
Oh, man, not me.
I'm not a convicted felon.
Comedians have been using the concept as a gag for decades. Back in his late-night days, Conan O'Brien frequently talked to politicians and celebrities alike.
Look at that audience, man. They is sweet.
It's the same technique used back in this 1959 Clutch Cargo cartoon series.
Paddlefoot, get away from that.
Look at Clutch. He picked up the bomb.
But researchers say it's no joke. Remember this video that shows a pig rescuing a baby goat? Or how about the one of the eagle snatching a baby? Both fake. Scientists say they developed the technology to raise awareness that in the internet era, you can't believe everything you see.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warns that the Zika virus in the U.S. could spread much farther north than previously thought. The CDC originally focused on the southeast when it looked at the location of the mosquitoes that carry the virus, but the new guidance shows that the two species have a far greater range that can stretch to big cities like New York and San Francisco. As you know, there have been no reported cases here in the United States, but looking at that map, do we now need to worry about that?
There are no reported cases transmitted by mosquito, but the mosquito season is coming. And so when May, June, July, August, September happen, mosquitoes are going to start to thrive, and we're going to be in trouble with regard to Zika. There are 300,000 to 350,000 births a month in the United States. And every pregnant woman is susceptible to being bitten by this Zika, by the mosquitoes that are carried by the Zika virus.
So what's your main concern right now?
Well, the main concern is that if a woman is bitten by a mosquito that has the Zika virus, that baby, while it's developing, may not have a normal brain. And so it is serious. The New England Journal of Medicine published just last night showed that in a woman who was pregnant, the Zika virus lasted in her blood over 10 weeks. And so we don't have real mosquito control efforts ongoing in a major way in the United States. Congress turned down a significant bill to research and fight Zika right before the Easter break. And there's going to be issues as mosquitoes start to thrive in the summer months.
A recent decision by one of the world's oldest universities to drop required courses in Christianity is a shock for Christians around the world. It's been an 800-year-old tradition at Oxford that undergrads study Christian theology for their entire 4 years. Now the school has announced that after freshman year, students do not have to study Christian theology. However, students can choose further Christian studies as electives. The school says it wants to recognize students come from different backgrounds and want to study different things like feminism, Buddhism, Islam, and even mysticism.
The online payment service PayPal said that it is canceling plans to open a facility in North Carolina and will take the 400 jobs elsewhere. It is the latest reaction to a new state law that critics say allows discrimination against gays and lesbians. 21 states, mostly in the South, have enacted similar laws that allow businesses to refuse services to people who offend the business owner's religious beliefs. Today, Mississippi took it one step further.
After weeks of protest, Mississippi now offers gays and lesbians the least discrimination protection in America. Its new so-called religious freedom law allows business people and government workers to deny services based on their religious beliefs. The law applies to marriage licenses, jobs, housing, even an employer's dress code, and prevents state government from intervening once religious beliefs are the reason given. Governor Phil Bryant signed it into law.
I think it protects the religious freedom of people who have deeply held religious beliefs, and so did the legislature and so did the majority of the people of the state of Mississippi, so we signed it into law.
A recent poll indicated nearly 2/3 of Mississippians support the new law. Pentecostal pastor David Tipton is one of them.
We should be able to freely express our religious views and live by our conscience.
Including who you do business with?
Certainly.
Gay rights advocates were outraged. One tweeted that Mississippi had enacted the most toxic anti-LGBT law ever. Also critical were Fortune 500 companies like Chevron, MGM Resorts, and Nissan, which said its policy is to prohibit discrimination of any type.
The UN says that nearly 400,000 people in most parts of Sudan are in desperate need of food aid due to low rainfall. UN officials say time has come to act urgently and decisively before the window of opportunity to respond is closed. They went on to say that the country's eastern regions of Darfur and Kordofan have been hit worst by the drought. The UN officials said nearly $12.5 million are needed to fund food assistance for those affected by the crisis. Last month, the United Nations issued a plan to send food aid to some 3.5 million Sudanese suffering from the impacts of the drought.
Now, government troops have uncovered a mass grave in the recently recaptured ancient city of Palmyra. So far, they have identified the bodies of 42 people executed by the Islamic State. 24 of the victims were civilians, including 3 children. The grim discovery showed many had been shot, while others were beheaded. The grave was found days after Syrian troops retook Palmyra from ISIL militants. The jihadists had been in control of the area since last May.
You know what we were talking about, right? Sexting?
Julie and Will Pilner of Lafayette, Colorado say their kids have told them sexting is just part of modern teenage life.
It's more widespread than I think we'd like to think it is.
A new Colorado bill would reduce the penalty for an underage teen who sexts, making it a Class 2 misdemeanor for electronically distributing, displaying, publishing, or possessing a sexually explicit image of himself or herself or of another juvenile. Current statutes can consider underage teen sexting a form of child pornography, a felony requiring those convicted to register as sex offenders.
This bill proposes
a charge that we're going to call misuse of electronic images. It doesn't even carry the title sexting. When this juvenile progresses to adulthood, that case can be sealed from the public.
Last year, an anonymous tip led officials at Colorado's Canyon City High School to discover a large-scale sexting scandal. They found hundreds of inappropriate images that had been collected and shared by their students. But prosecutors decided not to file charges.
I think this new law is making this issue a lot worse.
Assistant Professor Amy Hasanoff is author of Sexting Panic: Rethinking Criminalization, Privacy, and Consent.
It seems like a good idea. Sexting can technically count as child pornography, but a lot of prosecutors are really hesitant to use child pornography laws against teenagers.
I'm concerned that kids might get more widely prosecuted because it would be a lesser charge, and so people might be more willing to prosecute. And I don't think that's going to teach anybody the lessons we want them to learn.
A door-to-door polio vaccination campaign has started in Uganda. All children below the age of 5 are getting the dose, but some parents are not interested.
I do not want to immunize my child because I have heard of cases where children were immunized with an expired drug and it caused disability.
Health officials are trying to encourage as many parents as possible to embrace vaccination.
Now, the United Nations says it's received reports of alleged sex abuse by Tanzanian peacekeepers in northeastern Congo. According to the UN mission in Congo, a response team has been dispatched to investigate evidence of sex with minors and transactional sex. It also says if the allegations are proved, prompt action will be taken. The alleged perpetrators have been confined to their camp. The UN has been in the spotlight for months over allegations of sexual abuse of minors by its peacekeepers, especially those based in the Central African Republic and Congo.
About half the world's population is at risk of contracting dengue fever. This is according to the World Health Organization. The Philippines is one of the countries most affected by the mosquito-borne virus, and health officials there are giving children the world's first dengue vaccine.
British intelligence is tracking more than 50 jihadis, reported to be planning more than 20 terror attacks against the United Kingdom. Coming after the attacks in Brussels and Paris, a report in the Sun newspaper shows that the Islamic State wants to prove it can strike any major capital, and it has authorities playing catch-up.
This is the most serious terrorist threat we've faced in Europe for at least a decade, and even in the last 6 months, I think, we're faced by a determined new strategy by Islamic State to take the fight to Europe, to our streets, with a more aggressive form of international terrorism.
Even though counterterrorism officials have been tracking potential terror suspects, it's now clear that they've underestimated the size and scope of the terror network.
As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn. I have known Islam on 3 continents before coming to the region where it was first revealed. That experience guides my conviction. America is not and never will be at war with Islam.
Once again, the Muslim, disguised as our commander-in-chief, has openly scoffed at the reality of our national security. MRC TV reports the White House briefly pulled video of a press event on terrorism with President Obama, and when it reappeared on the whitehouse.gov website and YouTube, the audio of French President Hollande's translator goes silent, beginning with the words Islamist terrorism, then begins again at the end of his sentence. Even the audio of Hollande saying the words Islamist terrorism in French have apparently been edited from the video.
The roots of terrorism.
And this pattern has been repeating itself for years.
I don't quibble with labels. Islam is not part of the problem in combating violent extremism. It is an important part of promoting peace.
Is violent Islamist extremism at war with us?
No, sir. We are being attacked by Al-Qaeda and its allies.
Is Al-Qaeda, can it be described as being an exponent of violent Islamist extremism?
The Al-Qaeda are murderers with an ideological agenda.
That wasn't my question. My question was, is Al-Qaeda acting out violent Islamist extremism.
Al-Qaeda is a violent organization dedicated to overthrowing the values that we intend to advance.
Yes or no?
Can I hear the question again?
Yeah, could one of these three individuals have been incited by radical Islam? Apparently you feel that they could have been.
Well, I think potentially incited by of Islam that is inconsistent with...
Mr. A.J., it's hard to get an answer, yes or no.
They're unwilling to even mention a term when all over the world this is happening, and it's going to start happening more and more here because we're allowing so many in, is just incredible.
Why is Islamic terrorism such a dirty phrase to the Obama administration?
Intelligence officials in Pakistan say a local commander from the terrorist network Islamic State has admitted receiving funds transferred via the U.S. He made the confession while being interrogated.
Today, we learned that the same group may now be in possession of a deadly cache of American-made firepower, Stinger missiles.
Do you think it was a willful decision?
A willful decision to go support an insurgency that had Salafists, Al-Qaeda, and Muslim
Brotherhood? A willful decision to do what they're doing, which you'd have to really ask the president, what is it that he actually is doing?
It's simple. The Obama administration and the Muslim Brotherhood are one and the same. Back in June of 2015, the Washington Times reported that the policy of backing the Muslim Brotherhood is outlined in a secret directive called Presidential Study Directive 11, or PSD 11. The directive was produced in 2011 and outlines the administration's support for political reform, i.e. regime change in the Middle East and North Africa, according to officials familiar with the classified study. Efforts to force the administration to release the directive or portions of it under the Freedom of Information Act have been unsuccessful. America, fun time is over. While the fear machine keeps churning, on average, kids now spend less time outside than prisoners. At least 50 ISIS supporters work at the Brussels airport and openly cheered the Paris ISIS attacks. Obama's Iranian nuclear deal is thawing funds for global terror cells. U.S. commandos are scrambling to deter the activation of dirty bombs within the United States. Mexican drug cartels, supported by the big banks, are gaining new ground in the United States every day, while more Mexican civilians have been killed by the cartels than the civilians that have died in Afghanistan and Iraq since 2007 combined. And if you thought there may have been a ray of hope, the RNC is now hijacking the popular vote, and the American dream just lays there in its hospital bed, lifeless. It's as if Americans have entered into a state of nationalized domestic abuse. Our servant, big government, beats us, insults us, refuses us our God-given rights, and then arrogantly threatens to imprison us in our own home. But this is our house, and servants like these can be replaced.